Now that we have created these sockets, we can go ahead and attach the weapon to the hand. So let's go back to the player base. So in the player base previously, if you remember, we already made the loot weapon logic. So here we can actually make the player equip the weapon already. So what we can do is we need to use something called attach. So if you just search for attach, so you can use one of those, for example, attach actor to actor or actor to component and so on. So you can just select one of them to see what it is. So you're basically here for this one, for example, you're attaching an actor to a component. For example, you're attaching the weapon actor to the mesh component where you select which socket you want to add it to, for example, the S pistol, and then you can snap it to there and you can attach it to the hand. Now, instead of doing this, remember we are inside of a multiplayer game. This is not single player. If this was single player, we could just do it up here without all of this server and so on, and it would work. However, since we are in a multiplayer game, we need to replicate information from the server to the client. For visual changes like this, you have to use something called a rep notify, and we haven't used that before yet. So if you just right click on this weapon and you promote it to a variable, and I'm just going to call it looted weapon. Now for variables, let's now first collect or connect to this one, and let me double click. Actually, we already have a reroute node over here. So I'm going to drag it down here, connect it, double click on this one. And so now we have this variable. And if you click on it, now instead of setting it to replicate it, you have something called a rep notify. And where a rep notify is if you have any visual changes in your game that needs to be sent to all of the clients, you need to use a rep notify. Replicated is only used for information like numbers that are going to be sent to the client. So previously we have this one called equipped weapon, for example. This one we set to replicated because the client needs to know if this variable information, what it is set to, if it's set to unarmed pistol or rifle. However, for this one, I am going to do a visual change. It's not just number and information like text. I have to update the weapon so it is attached to the player's hands. So it's actually a visual update. This weapon is going to teleport to the player's hands and it is going to stay there. So I have a visual change that I need to do. And this is where you select a rep notify. Now, if you remember, we also used a multicast. So if I go back to the footsteps, we use this one called a multicast. So multicast also sends information to all of the clients. So why are we using a something called a rep notify instead of a multicast? So a rep notify is used for if you have visual changes that needs to be shown to all of the players, even those that are not connected to the server yet. So let's say someone connects to the server, like I go here and I loot the M4A4 or M4A1, and someone connects to my server 2 minutes later. If I do this code inside of a multicast, the connected player will not be able to see that I am holding this M4A4. The multicast is only usable for temporary things, for example, footsteps here and now, or if I play some firework visual effects that will disappear after 2 seconds. The connected players don't really need, or the player who is connecting right now doesn't really need to know about this because it probably already disappeared in the level, for example, the visual effect. So for a rep notify, it is used for visual changes that also needs to be seen by someone who is going to connect to your game 2 minutes from now. So I want to see players who's connecting to my game. I want them to see that I am now holding the M4A1. So let's go over here and let's click on it and let's click on rep notify. Go ahead and compile and you can see it already created like a function for you. So whenever this is going to be called, so you're going to load the weapon and this one is going to be set. Whenever this is going to be set and changed in value, it is going to automatically run this function. So now we can write the code inside of this function, and whatever we write inside of here, this will be notified to all of the clients. Okay, so first, before we attach anything, I want to take this looted weapon that we just looted, and let's drag here. And let's search for the weapon mesh. So if I go to the bottom and select weapon, so remember this weapon here, if I go back to the weapons and select the weapon base, this is the weapon skeletal mesh. So I'm going to select the skeleton mesh because remember, we are simulating physics. We don't really need to simulate physics whenever this weapon here is in the player's hands. We need to remove the physics. So what I need to do is first I need to drag from here and say set simulate physics, and let's go ahead and connect it, and let us set it to be false. So we don't really need to simulate physics when it is in the hands of the player. The next thing is I also need to remove collision because when it is in the hands of the player, we don't really need it to collide with anything. So again, drag from this weapon and say set collision, and select this one, set collision enabled, and let us connect it, and no collision. So now the weapon don't have any collision. We don't really need it when the player has it in the hands. Now remember, in the weapon base, you also have this sphere here. You need to remove the collision from this as well, else other players can actually walk into you when you have the weapon and they can loot the weapon from your hand. Now you can have it as a feature in the game, but for this one, let us remove it. So let's take the looted weapon again, and I'm going to drag from here and search for my collision sphere, and it's at the bottom here. And it's actually not called collision, it's just called sphere. And I'm going to rename it actually to collision sphere, just so it's more obvious. So collision sphere, go ahead and compile. Let's go back here and search for collision sphere now, and let me go to the bottom and select it here. Okay, so just like before, drag it here and say set collision enabled, this one here, and let us set it to no collision. So now when other players are walking into this collision sphere, they are not interacting with it because it now doesn't have any collision. And here I'm going to remember to make this false because we don't need to simulate any physics. The collision is off for the weapon and the collision is off for the collision sphere as well. Now, when we use the attach now, the function, we actually need to do something before, because when I was doing this before, there was a bug. I was playing here and I attached the weapon to my hand. And whenever I walked into these weapons, for some reason, even though I attached them to my hand, they kept being on the ground and I didn't understand. And the reason is here for the simulate physics, you can see here at the bottom, it says, note that if this component is currently attached to something, beginning simulation will detach it. This means when I simulate physics here, it will actually detach this weapon from the default scene root. So right now, it's just like if these two are not attached. So this is separate from this one. So I actually have to reattach the weapon to the default scene root. So let's actually do that. Let's take the loaded weapon. If I drag from here and search for default scene root, so the same name here at the bottom, and select it. Now what I want to use is I want to attach a component to a component. So remember, these are components. So if I drag from here and search for attach, and you can select this one, attach component to component. So I'm trying to attach not this one actually, I'm trying to attach the weapon here. So if I just drag and search for weapon and go to the bottom again, select the variable. So I'm trying to attach the weapon to the default scene root. So it looks like this again. And let us go ahead and connect it. And now we have to select the socket. So the socket, we don't really have anything. We're just connecting the weapon with the default scene root. So this one is fine. And for the location rule, all of these needs to be snapped to target. So it snaps to it just like this. And now it is correct. So it snaps to it. Let's go ahead and compile. And now everything should be working correctly. Now, if we try to attach the weapon to the hand of the player, so we can drag from here. Now, for the attach, we're trying to attach an actor, this weapon base. I'm trying to attach an actor to this mesh here, which is a component. So we need to attach an actor to a component. So if I drag from here and say attach, and you can search for actor to component. So I'm trying to attach the looted weapon actor. So if I just copy paste it here to the mesh over here, which is a component. And the socket we're trying to add it to right now is, let's say, for example, we called it rifle. Let's try for the rifle first, and we can always do the pistol later. And again, snap to target for all of those. And let's go ahead and compile and save everything. And let us see how it works. So if I click on compile now, or if I'll play now and select the terrorist, now if I walk into the rifle, you can see it's actually in my hands. You can see it here on the shadow. It's actually in my hands now. And the reason why I'm not holding the rifle animation is because we also need to update the equipped weapon. Remember, if I go back to the animation blueprint, this is some time now that we did it. If I go to the player animations and animation blueprint, remember that we're switching these animations here depending on what this equipped weapon enumeration is. And this one is coming from the player equipped weapon. So we need to change this one in order for the animations to change. So what we need to do here is let's do that quickly. So if we go back to the event graph, I can right click and make a new custom event, and I can call this one set equipped weapon. And again, I'm going to copy this name, right click, make a new custom event, run it through the server. And this one, run on server reliable. And I'm going to run the server one through this normal event, set equipped weapon. And now for this one, the only thing it's doing is it's setting this equipped weapon here. So if we just connect it like this, and if we connect it like this again, so the only thing this event is doing is it's setting this variable here to whatever we wish to set it to. And we're going to use this one later. So let us compile now. And remember, you can only set variables and replicate them when they are running through the server. So you can't use this one up here. You have to run it through the server before you can set it and replicate it to all of the clients. Okay, so now this is done. Let's double click on this variable. Again, you can open up the function here, or you can just double click here and it will make you enter to here. And now remember, we need to set the equipped weapon for the animation to update. So if you drag from here and search for the set equipped weapon we just made, and then we have to select what is the thing we want to set it to. Now, the thing we want to set it to is whatever you have looted. Remember, in the weapon, you made this weapon type. So if you take this looted weapon, you drag from here and search for weapon type. And now you know if it's a rifle or a pistol, for example, and it knows what animation to use. So if you connect it here, compile, let's click on play. And if you select the terrorist, just so we spawn beside it, and if I walk into this AK, for example, it's now going to change the animation to the correct one. Now, if I open up the client as well, just to make sure that everything is working, if I play as the server here, and I'm going to minimize this, and I'm playing as the client as well. So I open up the counter terrorist for this one, and I'm opening up the terrorist for this one. I'm going to walk over with the counter terrorist, and just to see if everything is working correctly. So if I work into this M4A4, you can see I have looted it. If I go close to the player, he's not interacting with my collision sphere because I have set it to no collision. And now for the other one, if I walk into this AK, you can see it is looted as well. I think I'll reduce the AK size, maybe. The weapon looks very large. You can see now it's only looting for the S rifle, because now if I walk into the pistol, it's also going to set it to the socket for the rifle, and it looks weird like this. And we have to change this later. So let's do that in the next lesson. For now, we actually attached it, and we can make this a bit more complex so it is also working for the pistol.